Okay, so it is time to review The Man of Steel. Man of Steel is the Christopher Nolan produced, Zack Snyder directed reboot of the Superman franchise. Man of Steel stars Henry Cavill as Clark Kent, Amy Adams as Lois Lane, and Michael Shannon as General Zod. I must confess that before I went to see this movie, I watched a number of reviews of it first on YouTube and had some idea of what to expect and what not to expect. I'm not sure how much that covered, how much that colored how much I liked the movie, but we'll go ahead with the review now. The upside. This movie is a big movie, a loud movie. There's a ton of action in it, and the action is for the most part pretty entertaining. I was prepared for the action to be quite big. As I said, I watched the other YouTube reviewers talk about that aspect of the film, but I found it to be less like a Michael Bay film and more like what Michael Bay probably thinks his films look like. In fact, I could probably see Michael Bay turning to Zack Snyder and saying, "You are my son." Henry Cavill is pretty good in the film, but you almost can't really say he played Clark Kent. He plays a man who's somewhere in the transition between being Clark Kent and Superman. It's almost like he played Clark Kent the same way Tom Welling played Superman. Yeah, he's the same guy, but not really. Most of the other actors are pretty decent in their roles. Amy Adams was a good Lois Lane. Um, Diane Lane was a pretty good Martha Kent. I did like Kevin Costner's performance as Jonathan Kent, but I didn't like Jonathan Kent himself. He seemed to be leading Clark in the wrong direction. I much prefer John Snyder on Smallville. But Michael Shannon as General Zod. At this point, I'm going to come out and say that he is the General Zod. Out of all of the General Zods that I've seen, he's my favorite. Certainly the scariest. And Russell Crowe, yeah, he's the Jor-El. Even before Marlon Brando. He's kind of badass. You get to follow him around quite a bit in the beginning of the film, and that's the version of Jor-El that I'm going to remember. So, the downside. The downside is, as I mentioned, you didn't really get the sense that Henry Cavill was playing Clark Kent so much as this sort of aimless drifter that happens to be a superhero. Also, in the middle of the film, there's a huge dead space where there's all of the flashbacks, all of the drama, all of it is sort of lumped together in one spot. And it was good, but it doesn't have the same tone as the rest of the film. It's a little bit like the film is going along at breakneck speeds, then it slams on the brakes and coasts for a little bit, and then it just races ahead again to the end. That dead space could have been peppered with a little bit more action, especially since most of it is flashbacks. More action could have been worked into it since it takes place in the same time period as the rest of the action. That could have been smoother. Finally, the rating. This is a very good movie. It is an excellent movie. I have to rate this movie at 4 stars. But to me, it didn't feel like an attempt at a 5-star movie that failed or even an attempt at a 3-star movie that overachieved. This felt like it was a 4-star script with a 4-star cast with 4-star direction, and it felt like it was aiming at 4 stars all the way and hit the mark 100%. It felt like a solid 4-star film all the way through. I didn't leave the theater disappointed or wanting more. I left the theater feeling like I saw what I came to see. So 4 stars for Man of Steel.